I often wonder about the most gruesome ways to die. Not because I'm morbid, but because, well, maybe I am a little morbid, but aren't we all to some degree? After all, death is the one thing that unites us all. But what about those deaths that stand out in history? The ones that make us shudder, that change the course of nations, that leave an indelible mark on our collective consciousness. Today we're going to explore 5 of the worst deaths in human history. Let's start with Joan of Arc, a young woman who heard voices from God, led armies and changed the course of the 100 Years' War. But at the age of 13, she began having visions that would lead her to become one of the most famous military leaders in history. How does a teenage girl convince an entire army to follow her? The answer lies in her unwavering conviction. But belief can be dangerous, especially when it threatens those in power. And Joan's beliefs, they shook the very foundations of medieval society. A woman leading armies, claiming to speak for God? It was revolutionary, and revolutions, well, they often end in flames. Now let's jump back even further in time, to ancient Rome, to Julius Caesar, a name that's become synonymous with power, ambition and betrayal. Born into a noble family in 100 BCE, Caesar was a military genius, a political mastermind and a charismatic leader. He expanded the Roman Republic, reformed the calendar and even became a god. Well, sort of. But what drives a man to such heights of ambition? Some would say it was his desire to make Rome great, others might point to his ego, but maybe, just maybe, it was his fear of death. Caesar was known to suffer from epilepsy, which the Romans called the falling sickness. In a society that valued strength above all, this weakness must have terrified him. So he conquered, he achieved, he made himself indispensable. But in doing so, he also made himself a target. And on the Ides of March in 44 BCE, that target was hit by not one, but 23 daggers, wielded by the very men he thought were his allies. Now let's fast forward to early 20th century Russia, to a man whose death is so bizarre it's become legend. Grigory Rasputin, the mad monk. But was he really mad? Or just different? Born to peasants in Siberia in 1869, Rasputin was a wanderer, a mystic, and eventually the confidant of the Russian royal family. But how does a peasant from Siberia end up whispering in the ear of the Tsar, which leads us to his death? A death so prolonged, so resistant to multiple attempts, that it's passed into legend. Poison, shooting, beating, and finally drowning. But why was he so hard to kill? Was it divine intervention, incredible constitution, or is the story simply exaggerated? John F. Kennedy, the young charismatic president who promised a new frontier. Born into a wealthy and politically connected family in 1917, JFK seemed destined for greatness. But destiny, well, it's a tricky thing. On November 22nd, 1963, in Dallas, Texas, those secrets, and Kennedy's life, came to an abrupt end. Was it a lone gunman with a grudge? A conspiracy involving the mafia, the CIA, or even the vice president? The theories are endless, but the impact, that was immediate and lasting. A nation watched in real time as their leader was killed, and in that moment something changed. A loss of innocence, perhaps, or maybe the birth of an era of distrust and conspiracy that continues to this day. And now we come to our final death. One that occurred just 5 years after Kennedy's, but in many ways shook the nation even more profoundly. Martin Luther King Jr., a man who had a dream. But dreams, well, they can be dangerous things. Born in 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, King grew up in a segregated America. But he envisioned a different future, a future of equality, of brotherhood. King's methods were revolutionary in their non-violence, but non-violence doesn't mean safety. King was arrested, his home was bombed, and he faced constant death threats. And on April 4th, 1968, in Memphis, Tennessee, one of those threats became reality. But why kill a man of peace? Was it racism, fear of change, or something more complex? And what happens to a dream when the dreamer is gone? Does it die too? Or does it take on a life of its own? Now, let's take a step back. We've talked about 5 brutal deaths. But what makes a death brutal? Is it the physical pain, the emotional trauma, or is it something else entirely? Think about it. When we hear about Joan of Arc burning at the stake, or Caesar being stabbed 23 times, or King being shot on that balcony, don't we, for just a moment, put ourselves in their shoes? Don't we feel a chill imagining what it must have been like? And in doing so, don't we come face to face with our own fragility, our own inevitable end? Maybe that's why these deaths fascinate us. Because in understanding them, we're trying to understand the greatest mystery of all, our own demise. But these deaths aren't just personal tragedies, they're pivotal moments in history, turning points that change the course of nations, of cultures, of the entire world. Joan of Arc's execution led to a resurgence in French nationalism that ultimately turned the tide of the 100 Years' War. Caesar's assassination marked the end of the Roman Republic and the birth of the Roman Empire. Rasputin's death was a precursor to the Russian Revolution, which reshaped global politics for decades to come. And what about Kennedy and King? Their deaths marked the end of an era of optimism in America, ushering in a period of disillusionment and civil unrest. But they also galvanized movements for civil rights and social justice that continue to this day. So here's a question to ponder. Can a single death really change the world? Or is it our reaction to that death that truly shapes history? Now you might be thinking, sure, these deaths were terrible, but that was then. We're more civilized now, right? Well, are we? In an age of global terrorism, of political polarization, of online radicalization, are we really any safer? Or have the methods just changed? Instead of daggers in the Senate, we have cyber attacks. Instead of burnings at the stake, we have drone strikes. The names and faces change, but the underlying human impulses, fear, greed, the lust for power, remain the same. So, what can we learn from these brutal deaths? Perhaps it's that no one, no matter how powerful or beloved, is truly safe. Or maybe it's that ideas are bulletproof, that killing the messenger doesn't kill the message. Or could it be that these deaths serve as a grim reminder of the price of progress, of change, of daring to dream of a better world? In the end, perhaps the most important lesson is this: life is fragile, fleeting, and infinitely precious. And what we do with it, well, that's up to us. As we've seen, death can be a powerful force for change, but is that change always for the better? Or do these brutal deaths sometimes lead us down darker paths? As you ponder these questions, remember, history isn't just something that happened in the past. It's something we're making right now with every choice, every action, every life, and every death. So, until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep dying to know more.